What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Got a special one for you here today. It's something that you don't see a whole lot of talked about on fantasy football channels, but it really should be. We're going to start discussing injuries. We've taught, a lot of information here over the past few weeks, the past few months, the past few years to help make you a better fantasy football player, but now it's time to take it to the next level. If you start to understand injury reports a little bit more, it's going to help you make those decisions on game day. We're all about trying to win games in fantasy matchups, and this is just the next piece to take you a little bit higher. So today, got another segment of What's Up Doc with Dr. Ethan Turner, where we're going to start breaking down certain injuries, talk about the players who maybe have dealt with them, what their performance did, and what you should come to expect on game days here, not only in 2020, but in the future. So without taking any more time, let's head over to What's Up Doc with Dr. Ethan Turner. All right, welcome in Dr. Ethan Turner. It's been a few weeks. Ethan, you've been a little bit busy with life here over the past few weeks. How you doing?
Believe it or not, real life has hit the medical field pretty hard these days. I'm good. I live it. I live the whole athlete training thing. So as COVID started hitting everywhere, I got moved around from 2 clinics to 3 clinics to now I'm getting back into 2 clinics. We start our athlete training program. So it's a lot of really good stuff happening in my real life, but it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're glad to have you back. We've had a few people leave some comments down below, wanting to know what your thoughts are. So you and I talked about a week or so ago, and we came up with an idea that we really don't see a whole lot of people talking about. So what we want to do is touch on how to deal with certain injuries, right? There's been players throughout certain seasons that maybe they pop up on the injury report, but do you understand what those injuries are? And do you understand what the limitations may be to those players? So today, we're talking ankles. And you're not going to find too many fantasy football channels out there talking ankles, Ethan. I mean, it's not exactly a cool topic. However, there's some good information here that you, the team owner, can take away. So, Ethan, we're going to start talking about the differences. We're going to talk about high ankle sprains and low ankle sprains. A lot of people may have heard those terms, but they may not have any idea, myself included, other than they both probably suck, what the differences are between those two.
Yeah. So the main difference, obviously, the problem is when they don't tell you what it is. Sometimes they'll just report ankle sprain, and you really do need to know the difference between a high and low ankle sprain because we're talking about different portions of the ankle. So with a low ankle sprain, typically that's when you turn your ankle in. I think about 80% of ankle sprains are because your ankle turns in. That's a low ankle sprain. What happens there is you basically tear or partially tear the ligament. Most likely, if you turned it in, it's the ATFL. So it's your anterior talofibular ligament, which kind of sits right on the front of your ankle. That is the most commonly torn ankle ligament. Sometimes you'll get the one on the side, on the outside, which is your calcaneofibular ligament. Ultimately, the big thing is to know is that these are the most common ankle sprains. They're low ankle sprains. They tend to recover. You tend to recover from them pretty quickly, especially NFL athletes. And the reason that they're able to come back very quickly is because with a low ankle sprain, you can brace it, you can tape your ankle, and that will provide that stability that those ligaments typically provide. And so because you can brace it, because you can tape it, it doesn't usually keep players out very long, maybe a week or 2 max. Normally you see with a low ankle sprain, players don't usually even miss that much time. That's a low ankle sprain. Now the high ankle sprain is a little bit different. So obviously, it's high because it's higher up in the ankle. And really, you could argue that it's not technically the ankle or what you consider the ankle. It's actually the shin bone, your tibia, and your fibula have a ligament that connects them together. And so they kind of run next to each other. And then down at the ankle, there's basically a ligament that connects the two. And when that is torn, that's considered a high ankle sprain. The difference between a high ankle and a low ankle as far as recovery goes is with a low ankle, like I said, you can brace it, you can tape it, you can stabilize it that way. With a high ankle sprain, there isn't really a brace out there that evidence has shown that can do what that ligament does. That ligament basically keeps those bones from bowing out away from each other. And when it's torn, every time you take a step, those two bones will spread a little bit. And so the way they grade these is basically with a high ankle sprain, if it's stable. So like when they take a step, as long as it's stable and it doesn't actually like come apart, that's a low grade or a grade 1 ankle sprain, high ankle sprain. When it does move apart when they step, or maybe it's a little unstable, that's usually a grade 2. And when it's on an x-ray, actually like apart as soon as they look at it, that's a grade 3. And so it's unstable. They're going to have to do something about that. It's not going to heal, basically. So with those grade 3s, that's like what an AJ Green had last preseason. So he had a grade 3, so they actually had to go in and have surgery to fix that, to basically stabilize the ankle. And when you have surgery, you're going from a normal high ankle sprain, you're looking at about 6 to 8 weeks fully recovered, assuming they're not playing football games. When you have the surgery, you're going from 2 months to about 4 to 5 months. And so that's why when you saw that injury and you found out that he had surgery and it was for an ankle sprain, AJ Green should have gone off your board, because it's very unlikely, given the time frame that it takes to recover, that he's going to come back. So that's kind of the main differences between a low and a high ankle sprain. It really is something that you got to kind of dig into and see and find what they're designating the ankle injury as, because the timelines can vary from not missing any time to 5 months, depending on what type of ankle sprain they had.
Yeah, it's definitely something you need to pay attention to. I mean, not only just in the preseason, but all throughout the season also, because that's going to help you determine, as you look ahead in your lineups, who am I going to have? Who may I not have? Who may be slightly limited? And there was a few players last year that we kind of saw this with, right? We're going to have an example of one of each, a high ankle sprain and a low ankle sprain, and kind of give you guys a little bit of feedback as to how it affected their game. Now, the first one we're going to talk about, it's going to be Joe Mixon. He himself suffered a low ankle sprain back in week 1 of 2019. And a lot of people, that was the time of year where they started hopping off the bandwagon because the production wasn't there, Ethan.
Yeah, with Mixon, pretty textbook low ankle sprain. And so week 1, he actually didn't miss any games last year with this ankle sprain, but you could tell that it was affecting him from a production standpoint. So I actually went back. And so from weeks 2 to 8, he averaged in half point scoring in fantasy football 9.7 fantasy points per game, which in half point PPR, that's not very good for a running back that you probably had to draft as your RB1. You're going to lose a lot of weeks that way. But after he hit the week 9 bye, he finished the season very, very strong. And this is something that I look at a lot when I see an ankle injuries specifically. I do it with all injuries, but for ankle specifically, because the time frame can vary, when that bye week happens is super important for predicting when these guys are going to return and what they're going to look like when they do return. When you're in the middle of an NFL season, you don't have time to recover. You don't have time to rest an ankle injury. And so typically when they get a bye week, that is their rest week. That is the week that they get 2 full weeks to rest and recover, and that those tissues can then heal, and they can do it in a way that, basically the tissue itself is providing that support, as opposed to relying on taping up their ankles, giving them a big hefty brace. Typically if they can get that bye week in, they're going to recover a lot faster and be a lot better off after they come back from that bye week. So after the bye week and half point PPR scoring, from weeks 10 to 17, 17.2 fantasy points per game. So almost doubled his production in the second half of the year after he got that bye week, after he got that rest. And so I really, truly believe that ankle from week 1 is what impacted him all the way up until the bye week. And then after that, you could expect a big bounce back. So when you're looking at something like that as a fantasy player, that's maybe a guy that I'm targeting on that bye week, because I know he's been dealing with stuff kind of on and off the whole start of the season. He's going to come back well rested, and he's probably going to be able to provide some fantasy value to me in the second half of the season. So that's kind of how you can look at a low ankle sprain and see ways that you can kind of manipulate, I guess, your strategy in a way to maximize or minimize the impact that it has on your fantasy team.
Yeah, and you kind of saw it right after that. I mean, even with Joe Mixon, just in his actual usage numbers, even if you take away the fact that he wasn't as efficient, his touches went down per week also. I mean, you're looking at 11, 15, 15. He did have 19 in week 5, but after that bye week, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games with at least 19 carries or more. One of them he had 30. So you can tell that by that point, the ankle was feeling a lot better, and that's when he really started to turn it on their second half of the season. So obviously you can't see that as the season is happening, but if your player suffers an injury like that, and then the next week out you see a dramatic decrease in touches, it's because the ankle's bothering him, and you can kind of just look for the bye week, like you mentioned earlier, to actually get a little bit of relief. But we also had a big-name player suffer from a high ankle sprain last year. Also, Saquon Barkley back in week 3 had himself a high ankle sprain, and a lot of people who spent maybe a number 1, number 2 overall pick on him didn't really see a whole lot of benefits from it the first half of the season.
Yeah, this one was tough for a lot of people. I mean, Barkley was pretty well consensus top 3 fantasy pick in pretty much every format. And so when he goes down in week 3 with a high ankle sprain, they gave him a 3 to 6 week time frame. He came back at the minimum of that. So he came back in 3 weeks. So he missed 3 games. He returns in week 7. And basically from week 7 to 14 in half point PPR scoring, he only averaged 12.3 fantasy points a game. And if you look at Barkley, he actually didn't lose that the volume that we talked about with Mixon. He was still getting the volume. He just was not as efficient or effective as a runner, as a pass catcher. I mean, he had a few games in there where he was, catching 7 or 8 balls, and he just was not able to. You weren't seeing the Saquon Barkley that you saw his rookie season where he would take a catch and take it 60 yards. We weren't seeing that for a large chunk of last season after this injury. Just for reference, in 2018, he averaged 21.3 fantasy points per game and half point scoring. So you're looking at almost a 9-point difference during that stretch after this ankle sprain, from week 7 to 14, and then from the previous year. So clearly this ankle was not right. And yeah, he did have a bye week, but with a high ankle sprain, the bye week isn't as important as what it is for a low ankle sprain because the injury is more significant. And like I said, you can't brace it. There's no way to protect this type of injury with a brace or with taping. You basically either play through it or you give it time to heal. And in Barkley's case, he chose to play through it, which I'll never fault a player for playing through an injury, but it is important when we're looking at him from a fantasy asset. If you're playing hurt, you're not going to get that same type of production that you're expecting from a guy like Barkley.
Yep, absolutely. So with a high ankle sprain, you're looking at a little bit longer of a waiting period for that dynamicness to come back. And I just made up the word dynamicness.
Dynamicness.
I mean, it just sounds amazing, though, right?
It does.
I mean, whatever it is, Barkley has it. He's not normal. I remember watching last season, and right after he suffered that injury, was it practice? He was out there doing some crazy hurdling or something. He was out there jumping like 18 feet in the air. I mean, the guy is not a normal human being to begin with.
No.
He still got that volume. Maybe a lot of other running backs don't do what he did, but that inefficiencies cost a lot of people. He had some big games there at the end of the year, but they were against some cream puffs in Miami and Washington. But I mean, he had over 200 yards in 2 games. So, I mean, he was obviously feeling a little bit better. But
at that point, he gave you basically half a season of not producing. So you're hoping you manage to make it into the fantasy playoffs. And then even then you're with him being likely your first pick. That's a hard sell for me. Yeah. I mean, I really think that teams are going to be just overall pretty disappointed.
Yep, absolutely. So we've talked about the worst case scenario, which was AJ Green needing surgery, missing multiple weeks, months worth of time. Then we go down to the high ankle sprains of the Saquon Barkleys, where you're still going to miss a few weeks, and then it's kind of like play it by ear. And then you have the low ankle sprains of a Joe Mixon, who may just see some lower inefficiencies, some lower touch totals for a few weeks, but with rest, he should be good. But I don't think it's just running backs that people should really be paying attention to personally. I know like when we're in season and I'm reading through the injury reports, we're covering it on our live shows on Saturdays. One of the things we always look at is the health of offensive linemen also. I mean, you're talking about these same type of injuries, and we're talking about running backs making cuts and planting their foot in the ground and using that ankle. The same thing happens for offensive linemen. So don't neglect that position. It's the least sexiest position maybe on the football field besides long snapper. But those guys are super important and really rely on that type of stuff too. So that's just, in my opinion, something else I'm going to look for to make sure that my running backs have their linemen may be playing, but are they going to be limited also, because that could play a part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every position. I mean,
Yeah.
the nice thing is if once you understand the injury, you understand how it's going to affect a lot of different players on the field. I'm sure when we get into the season, if we see an ankle injury in a quarterback or a wide receiver, we will touch on those as well.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. We're going to be covering them all off season long. And once the regular season starts, Ethan will be more of a mainstay here, and we'll probably see him on a weekly basis at that point to make sure you guys have all the information you need. But this is a different type of series, right? We're used to talking about players and breakouts and busts and sleepers, but it's this type of information that really has a lot of value to make you a better fantasy football player overall. Not just trying to find somebody in a great draft, but to have a great season all year long. That's what our aim is here with this type of series. So, Ethan, I greatly appreciate your time and your medical knowledge, because I had no idea what the difference was. But it's fun to talk about. It's something different, and I'm sure a lot of people enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I think understanding the injuries, this is the next step to your fantasy playing. It's the difference between somebody that's just casually playing to somebody taking that next level up. So it's that little bit diving a little bit deeper, and we're here to provide it. And that's really my number one goal, is to make people better fantasy players. So if you like this, if you want more of this, I know we're already planning on a few different types of injuries that we're going to do videos like this on. If you have an injury that you want to know about, let us know in the comments below. Give this video a like. Let us know that this is something that you want more of at Headliner Nation. So we will get you taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. We can keep on going as long as we need to make sure all the information is supplied to you guys. We greatly appreciate the support. Like Ethan already said it. He said hit the like button for us. The likes greatly help us here on YouTube. And if you like the deep diving information, make sure you subscribe, because the channel is absolutely filled with it right now. So hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week, a great weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Looking forward to hearing from you guys down in the comment section. You guys have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you later. Thanks.